So, can you talk to us a little bit about using literature and storytelling to communicate the ideas and concepts of watershed health?
Well, I think it's in literature and in the arts in general that people have an experience with an idea that they don't have someplace else, and that experience, a lot of that has to do with the imagination and the engagement of the imagination with an idea. What the kinds of things we are talking about here, and the kinds of people who are working in work with ecology and environment in general, part of what we're challenged with is getting people to see the world in a different way. And the imagination is an enormous tool in helping people think about what their lives could be like that's different than the way their lives are now. To be sure, the science is an enormous part of the base of our understanding of how we live with the world, but our values, our moral vision for our lives, what we expect from ourselves, what we expect from our surroundings, really what we want our lives to be. These are enormous questions within the conversation about the environment and people in the environment. And in literature, there's an opportunity to plunge yourself into an idea or someone else's experience that allows for something that I think could be genuinely transformative. Something happens as a result of your experience with this story that changes your expectations of your life, changes your expectations of the world. To be given a lot of information about racism, for example, why racism is bad and how racism makes people feel, that's one thing. But to read a novel in which you are really plunged into the life of a person who is experiencing racism in a way that you will never experience racism in your life, that's different. And there's a potential of transformation that takes place when you are genuinely engaged in an authentic story like that.
Mm-hmm. So, in that line, is there a way that scientists and authors can communicate the story so that then the author can transform it?
That's a really critical question. And it's, I think, one of the things that we have learned over and over again through our talks this weekend is the need to create clear channels of conversation between scientists and writers, and to help writers know what the stories are that the scientists are learning in a place like this, where you have a very dramatic story to be told around this long-term research. And where lots of writers are coming and telling a dramatic story. And also to learn to teach the writers to anticipate the kinds of things that are going on in a place like this.
People often criticize scientists for not really being able to tell the story behind their data. Is there some advice?
That's not their job. Mm-hmm. That's not their job. Just as it's not the novelist's job to come out here and major trees. These are separate professions, they're separate skills, they're separate dispositions. What it takes to be a writer and what it takes to be a scientist, these require really different motivations. There are certainly some scientists who write very well, and there are some scientists who have a real knack for knowing how to interpret their own work. But interpretation and broader communication, that's the job of the writer, of the artist, of the communicators.
So really you're talking about making it a very common occurrence to have the interaction so that people can share the information and then each can disseminate it in their way.
Whatever you could do to get these groups talking to each other would be a good thing. We know that some scientists feel that their work is at risk in some way when it becomes politicized, or when it becomes discussed out of context. And we know that happens to some researchers when their work is brought back to the broader world by writers. But that's the nut that has to be cracked there somehow. Getting people who are good at communicating, whether they be writers or filmmakers or artists or TV people, as engaged in what people are learning in a place like this as the scientists themselves are.
Right. And so, is there a role for technology?
Well, I think there's an enormous role for technology. Film, of course, I mean, a book is technology, but so is film. And more, I think multimedia shows us ways of bringing the story of a place like this back to the general public.
Mm-hmm. I'm just wondering about,
Were you thinking of some technology in particular?
No, actually, that's exactly what I was thinking about. Is just using the internet and mass media to spread the word more.
The demonstration we were given last night of a computer flyover of this watershed, as it has been deforested and potentially could be reforested. That's a very, very dramatic tool, because that's the kind of question that anybody who looks at that, no matter what their predisposition is, whether they care about the environment or don't care about the environment, that's a tool that makes you say, where do I want to live? What do I want the place I live in to be like? What do I want this to be like for my children? The trees are going away. Does this mean that by the time my children grow up, there are no trees? Mm-hmm. That's a very, very powerful tool.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that was also my impression, that it was such a good tool to display the choices that you make today. Yeah. So what do you think about individual choices and individual choices really affecting change in the condition of watersheds?
Well, we know we need a lot of information, scientific information, political information about how a place is governed. But at the base of that, somewhere has to be people's individual opinions about what they want their lives to be like. They can live in a place that's polluted and denuded and not very interesting to look at, or they can live in a place that's as beautiful as this is. Those decisions grow out of individuals' values, what they expect from themselves and what they expect from their surroundings. And a lot of what the people I work with in my role as an editor of a magazine that publishes a lot of writing about nature and environment, is people talking about how they have come to feel differently about the earth and nature, and how they have become activists on behalf of a vision they want to see enacted.
So what factors have you heard that drive that change? What has made people alter their relationship with the earth?
Well, anyone who's had a child knows that he or she suddenly is asking very different questions about what their relationship with the world is. Anyone who's been sick, it becomes aware of the possibility that part of the reason that we may be sick is that there's something in the world that has made us sick. Anyone who's had a place that they love that's been destroyed one way or another, these are all starting points for people who want to express a different kind of responsibility to the world.